had a chance to ask a player, Garrison, what did you learn after losing to LAFC last season? He's like, what I learned is just, I don't care if it's LAFC or not. We come to win, and if we don't win, like there's something wrong with us. And I feel like this season, the confusion has just been very two polarizing groups, Wolf out and Wolf in. He hasn't really understood how to manage the locker room and a group of players in tough scenarios, or how to bounce back. You sort of took out some key components from last year into this year, and then you didn't really replace them with players that will bring that same caliber of leadership. And after that, it started just going downhill. Especially the first game is what set for me. It was sort of a precedent of what was to come. We came in very, very, very what was that word? Not creídos, like very, like there was just a sense of humility that was lacking. Thinking first game against St. Louis, we're gonna win it. We're at home, and then we lost. Right after that, we won a couple of games, but it wasn't just the same. And ever since Violete, the Conca champions, that sort of just started the nightmare for everyone here in Austin.
Kylian Mbappe could have never played football if he grew up in the U.S., in my opinion.
Being from the States, you have to learn how things are over there, because MLS is much different than the Premier League, and you're almost stepping into a different realm.
With the 2026 World Cup coming here, and a new generation of fans start to become to discover the game, there's no telling where the game's going to be 10, 15, 20 years.
One game changed my life, and that's all it ever takes.
Richie, man, feel like it's been months. It hasn't been months since we recorded this show, but it feels like it's been months, man. I've had COVID. I've had traveling this summer, keeping up with the crazy MLS season. Look, man, I'm so glad we're doing this. I'm glad that you're here. I feel like we've been talking about this for more than a few weeks now, man. For those of you who are seeing this gentleman on my screen today, he's a content creator himself, a massive football fan himself. He's interviewed everybody from artists down to small business owners, down to journalists down there in the beautiful city of Austin, Texas. Richie Contreras Plaza, welcome in, my man. Episode 65. How are you?
Hey, thank you, Jose. I really appreciate your invite.
Yeah, man. I thank you for accepting, bro. I appreciate it. Look, man, we've been talking a lot about, of course, your content, bringing you and what you're doing, that amazing show, Otra X Favor, over to GOLZtv. I was super excited about that. And I feel like, man, you guys do it different down in Austin, man. Not just you, but everybody, the community, the very vibrant content creator and fan-made community that's growing down there in that part of Texas. I'm not too far from you guys up here in Dallas.
Yeah.
So I get a little jealous every now and then. I don't feel like we have quite as much going on up here as you guys have going on down there. But let's talk about it, man. Anybody who's tuned into Box to Box up to this point knows what we're all about. We want to tell stories. We want to make this game relatable. And whether we're talking about Otra X Favor or any other show or creator that we filmed with in the past, we're always looking to kind of pull those barriers down. Soccer and football are growing at unprecedented rates here in the States, and I think your story is going to be a massive part of that, man. So I'm excited that you're here. Let's jump into it. There is a question that I ask every single guest when they first come onto this show. It's kind of a tradition here.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and knock it out. And it is kind of I wouldn't say it's too deep. Some have said it's very philosophical. I don't think it is. I think it's just a very honest and raw question, right? Which is, Richie, who are you today?
Dude, who am I today? I'm a busy man, dude. I think I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I didn't know a lot of the stuff that came out to me quickly. So it's one of those that you have to be prepared for what was to come, or adapt to, situations that you have in front of you almost every other weekend or every weekend. So that's where am I today. I'm still a regular dude that gets home to his house with his wife and takes care of his dog, walks him in the morning, have a regular job. But it's just I'm a busy dude. Like I would say this past 3 years have been quite busy, and I've been busy in the past.
You're always doing something, bro. I love it, man.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, it's funny you mentioned the last 3 years, right? You know, you've been busy. I feel like a lot of that has to do with, you know, the Austin FC community that's grown over the last 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that club coming to town, and look, we'll get to that part of the story. I think that part's massive. It shouldn't go unnoticed for anybody who lives down there and is very familiar with what you're building. But look, man, for me, this is going to be a massive learning experience today. I'm actually really curious myself. I firmly believe anybody who's a fan of the beautiful game today has that story, right? Or that relative or whoever it may be, friend, family member who just helped bring them into this game, a moment, if you will, sometimes. And for me, it's, you know, that it lives in my mind rent free. That shit never really goes away. And I hope that with my son, who's 4 months old, that he gets to kind of form his own memories and has his own stories to tell one day. And I hope that they're just wildly different than mine. But I'm willing to bet yours is also probably very, very different. So Richie, you know, let's kind of bring the audience in a little bit, man. You have your own fan stories, I'm sure, but who were some of the earliest influences? Like, who brought you into this beautiful game?
Dude, I would say my dad. I grew up him, you know, playing soccer on Sundays, and then, you know, he's been an America fan for forever.
My dad too, bro.
There we go. However, and he used to go to the games. Like in the 1980s, he said he would go to every America game at the Azteca because I was born in Mexico City, so every weekend he was there. And then he got married, and you know that kind of changed. So I told him, man, you could have stayed single, bro. He's like, oh, what about you guys? I'm like, don't worry about me. Worry about you. But you know, our parents, you know, they do everything they can to change and adapt to what we had as kids. So yeah, I've watched soccer for years. I mean, I have memories of the 1994 World Cup, watching it in school, and they actually canceled, you know, classes, and everybody was watching in a small auditorium, and it was, you know, Los Penales against or Bulgaria. So it is one of those that you grew up also playing, you know, club soccer on the weekends. My dad had a team, and then we moved to California, and that kind of changed a bit because we were so worried about, you know, trying to make it over there that you couldn't really think about soccer as much. I would say not into the 1998 World Cup. That's when I got to revive that, you know, the love for the sport. And like that kind of helped on, that was in California when that happened in 1998. And then we moved back to Mexico in 1999. So from that, I pick up pretty much where I would say I left off, or what I knew about, you know, La Liga MX, and America, also La Selección, because back then they had I think the U20 had a pretty good run in their World Cup, and they made it to the semifinals. Mm-hmm. But it was the first tournament where Rafa Marquez played, Cepeda, and those guys were the ones that won the Confederations. So my true first live experience was watching Mexico versus Bolivia in the Azteca.
Wow.
That was pretty dope. And I don't know, ever since then, you know, my love for soccer just stayed.
So how did you migrate over to you went to California, right? You mentioned growing up down in Mexico, of course. Yeah. And now you're in Texas. Like where did that migration really come from?
Dude, I always say this joke, and it's, you know, the reason why Mexico doesn't have a lot of good runners and swimmers is because they all came to the U.S. So that's what it was. We came both times illegally, and I'm okay to talk about that. I really don't give a shit. I think part of the story, and it's not even something to you. You don't want people to like feel bad about you, but you also want to bring awareness. Like, hey, you know what? Be happy for what you have, because there's people that have the worst. But yeah, 1995. So basically, when I was born to 1995, I was in Mexico City. 1995 to 1999, we were in California. In California. And then 99, 2000, we were in Mexico for a year and a half, and then came in June 2000, and been here in Texas ever since.
Wow, that's crazy. So you said you're an America fan. Tonight, big night, a classic. Right?
Yeah.
how I don't know. Have you talked to him today to just I don't know chat about the game? And of course, you know, for any listener who's not in the know in terms of what I'm talking about, right? America versus Guadalajara, easily the biggest rivalry in Mexico, at least in my opinion. And I think that my dad has already been texting me about the game.
Yeah.
I don't really have a dog in this fight. I'm not a massive America fan like my own parents, but
Mhm.
I'm not a Chivas fan either. I'm just kind of I want to see Liga MX get back to what it used to be.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, with this rivalry, I mean, I don't know. Any predictions?
Hey man, America 2-0.
There you go. There you
I already
go.
have a bet. I have several of my friends are Chivas fans. So I already got, a
Same.
6-pack against each. So I'm gonna end up with an 18-pack by the end of the weekend.
I love that, man. I love that. So, anyway, man, not to divert too far away from the story, but you know, your dad, he moves you guys around a little bit. You find your way to Texas. When you get here to Tejas back in 2000, I'm trying to think back to what life was like 20 plus years ago in this state. Because for those who are not familiar with this part of the country,
Mhm.
with massive Hispanic culture, right? But at the same time, the other football reigns supreme down here, right? The NFL, American football. And sometimes it's hard to have meaningful conversations around the beautiful game on this side of the country just because of how many distractions there really are and how spread out we really are as people. So what was it like? I mean, was there any kind of culture shock moving from Mexico or from California over to Texas?
Dude, I think I would say maybe from 1995 to 2000, I lived in an abundance of culture shock because you're moving back and forth, and also lived in Tijuana for a couple of months in between those times. So it was, coming from Mexico to California. I mean, yeah, from Mexico to California. In Mexico, ¿qué onda, mijo? ¿Qué pasó? And over here you come with, with that slang, and they're like, pinche chilango.
Yeah.
And then from, you go back from California to Mexico, and you have, the like the Chicano, the Cholos, the breakdancers, all that culture ingrained in you. So you're trying to come back to like Mexico, and Cholos are around, and that's just because we lived in el barrio. So it's for a teenager, it's like, crap, everything's different because everybody in Mexico City is huge on rock, and I wasn't really close to rock, and I had to be, adapting to getting closer to rock and then ska. But then that's when I found bands like Molotov, Baton Roco, and I think in between all of those culture shocks, you're just trying to find a little similarity, and then just write off the adapting part. And then once you understand what's going on, then it's easier. But I don't know, maybe the first couple of 6 months, every time we moved, were like the toughest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally hear you on that, man. And I didn't move that much as a kid. We made one move as a family from Chicago over to Texas, and that was it. And I just remember it being I didn't know what to think about Texas. I really didn't. There was next to nobody here versus in Chicago, where it's not just Mexicans, right? I mean, you think about Hispanics, it's literally everybody: Peruvians, Argentinians. You think even further south than that, right? Like it's a melting pot of cultures, and it was almost the exact opposite when I moved here. So it actually was, for the first couple of years, man, somewhat negative of an experience for me. I wasn't too big of a fan of Texas until I started making friends and exposing myself to the culture a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the stadium, I mean, I'm probably going to get shit for this, but I don't like the state. I like the people, but I like some people. But I'm not a big, like, Texas this, Texas that. And I'm like, no, I think there's better. Yeah. Every time they talk about tacos and everything, I'm like, no, I think there's better. I mean, I appreciate the state. I mean, I think the one way for me to appreciate somewhere you live is just by doing the best you can as a person that lives there, you can not agree with, how everything is in the state, just in general. But at the end of the day, it's like, you're here, so why not fucking contribute?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're so positive the way you kind of approach that, bro. I mean, obviously, I don't know. How old were you when you moved here?
I was to California, I was 10, and to Texas, I was 14, about to turn 15.
Okay. So a very interesting time for you then, as a teenager coming over. I was much younger, so I think that I had probably zero understanding of what I was moving into. But I think everything kind of fixed itself a little bit for me when I found football. I think for me it was like it tends in my mind to fix most things. Like I could just go out to the park, play with the ball by myself, and be fine, or go into the backyard and forget about things for a little bit. At that age, you were already obviously following La Selección. You had your America down in Mexico that you're supporting. When you moved, from your perspective, where was football or soccer in this country from your perspective? Had you heard of anything here? Did you even know there was any kind of a league that was professional? I'm just really kind of curious.
Yeah, I remember the MLS because when we moved to California, that's when they first came out. So LA Galaxy was a team, and then like when the league first started, Hugo Sanchez came to Dallas Burn, I believe. Jorge Campos, I can't remember who he played, but he also had a Matador who was playing at the MLS, for part of the season, and then the other part he would be loaned out to America. Who else was there? Was a Salvadorian, Mauricio Cienfuegos, and then players like Juan Pablo Angel who moved here eventually. So you were familiar with some names. So I do remember that there was a team here, and my fanboy dream was Chivas is bringing a team to the MLS, so America should be doing the same move. And the rumor was always that Houston was going to pick up that spot, but ended up not happening and ended up being Dynamo. But that rumor apparently was quite strong, and I guess they noticed it's going to be too expensive. There's so many rules or whatnot, and they're like, nah, hell nah. But I was pretty familiar with the MLS.
And then look what happened to Chivas USA, right? I mean, I think they obviously no one planned for it to go that way, right? It collapsing, and I don't know if it was viewed any particular way down in Mexico. I know here in the U.S. it was easy for American fans to make fun of it because I think most American fans believe that there can't be the bleeding of the lines like that, right? You bringing a Liga MX club up to the States, bleed the cultures, share resources. I think that most fans just believe that there needs to be that separation, whether it's for the rivalry that exists between U.S. and Mexico or not. But seeing an America expansion team, I think would be very interesting. We see a lot of a movement like that today with Tigres. I know Tigres are very, very vocal about trying to be the Mexican team here in the States, whether it's through the men's team or the women's. But it's interesting, right? I mean, how much Mexican culture has been able to kind of put its stamp on the game here in the States. But you were down in Austin at the time, right? So what kind of football existed down in Austin?
Actually, I was in Galveston.
Oh, even further south.
Yeah. So the culture shock with another one was going from Mexico City to Galveston. 20 million, give or take, and you compare it to 70,000, a small island where in the winter there's nothing going on. I was never the best player, but I always remember, I'm just gonna study how Pavel Pardo or they do the corner kicks or the free kicks, and I'm gonna try to get in shape just to last, a game. But my specialty was those two, so that can, in high school, that was my thing. It's just like assisting through corner kicks or free kicks or any crossings. But now here in my high school, there was actually it was pretty competitive because we had a very good team. We just didn't have a good coach. I remember our varsity team played against what was Cyprus back in the day, and they were the state champions of the previous school year. And our team, we had guys from Switzerland, from Turkey, from Mexico, from El Salvador, from Spain. And I learned more about European football through a guy named Fernando Tresaco. He was the son of a referee for La Liga back in the 90s. And he actually sold me jersey of Zamorano when he used to play in Inter. And I don't know if I still have it or not, but that was,
Damn,
it was growing. Like, it was starting to grow, but nobody really paid attention to it as much as it is now. Everybody was like, soccer, what? Soccer? Go, MLS, like kicking the ball, that's it. And I'm like, all right, cool. One day you guys are gonna, you guys are gonna be enjoying this shit.
Bro, tell him. I'm telling you right now. Like, you're talking about, like, in high school in Texas, right? That was kind of the vibe.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man. Like, people don't. I think most people forget that. Like, I don't know if it's talked about now. I mean, I have a younger brother who isn't too far out from his days in high school, so maybe I can go back and ask him and see what it was like. But yeah, man, like, it wasn't the coolest thing in the world to be a soccer player. Like, I remember giving up American football to play, because I played both at one point. To play just traditional soccer and getting made fun of, kids telling me that I was scared to play American football, that I couldn't hang with the pads on or anything else, and that has nothing to do with it. This game has been played generationally in my family for years and years. I played American football to fit in, but soccer players are always kind of viewed that way, as it was just this boring sport that people didn't watch, that couldn't hold a candle to American football. And I thought you got that in some places around the country, but I think in Texas, man, it's just it hit heights, I think, that many other states and many other kids just never saw.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, even like smaller towns in Texas, it's all about football. Friday Night Lights, that's a good example. But I think it changed for me. The pivot was the 2010 World Cup when Spain won that. For me, that changed everything, because I remember 2002. I mean, the games were overnight. They were Korea, Japan, so you really watched them at home. 2006, you started seeing some more games on TV, but 2010, you actually had watch parties. You actually also had, the final. I remember watching in a bar, so, and it was like packed. So from that, Messi started coming out more and more, and it just kept growing and growing.
And now look at it, man. Now look at the league, and now look at it. How, I mean, you have kids. I've never seen so many kids rocking a professional player soccer jersey. And I know it's Messi. I know it's the mania, and he's taking over, and probably the biggest player we've ever had. I know Pele obviously had years and years ago his stint back, in MLS, and or before it was MLS, right? Just the American soccer leagues, but. And of course the David Beckham stint back in 2007, but I don't think any of that really compares when you combine it with things like social media, when you see as many content creators as exist around this game today. Nothing compares to the microscope that Messi's under, and how much this game has already grown by him just being here a couple months. Like, it's actually insane. Now I think that I don't know how much of it we can carry over after he leaves. Do you think it's possible that the new fandom we're seeing around this game is sustainable even after he exits MLS?
Yeah. I think one is just there's teams pretty much in every major city, and 2 or 3 teams. So there's some sustainability there, and I think the plan for the MLS is to actually keep teams or build USL teams around those smaller areas as well. I think the sport is going to continue to grow, because knowing as how this country is, the US is going to try to find the next Messi. They're going to try to bring him out from the woods or anywhere. I think Messi's impact is kind of like David Beckham's. Changed everything in the MLS, brought a revolution to what it is now. But I think Messi's it's gonna bring it to a whole different new level, because you're having to adapt to the best player in the world next to Cristiano Ronaldo. So it's like what he's saying, and what he's gonna tell the MLS, they're gonna have to bend the arm and say yes to a lot of things, just because the only way for it to grow and keep attracting player is by switching things up.
I agree, man. I think we think about the rules in this league, right? Because they're so different. There's so many fans right now around the world who want to watch Messi that are trying to figure out what the designated player rule is, right?
Yeah,
They're trying to
yeah,
figure out what
yeah.
our special salary cap rules look like. Like whatever it may be, the conferences that we have in our league versus just one flat table. Like there's so much of MLS that's very nuanced to us here in America. And I think that if we want it to grow, I agree with you. I think right now it's like we're slightly bending the rules. But I think eventually you're gonna have to bend them so far back that they break, and you're gonna have to rewrite the rules and make them a little more friendly to players who play abroad in other leagues who may entertain the idea of coming here one day. And hopefully by doing that, we catch them earlier in their careers, not later, right? With the whole idea of Major League Soccer being a retirement league and things like that. We're moving away from that narrative in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, and there's just one thing when you look at the national team. It comes to the U.S., it's easier for a player who's not born here to feel American and be accepted as an American, where putting it in Mexico, naturalizado, it's like a sin kind of. So you're gonna have two different points of views in our side of the world, and those two are gonna try to compete, and those two are gonna have to find ways to, one, make their shit grow because they stop growing within, and the other one is like, how can you grow but also keep up and be able to adapt to what players also want in a league.
Yeah, it's difficult, man. It's a fine balance, but I think over time we will get there. My bold prediction, I think eventually MLS grows to, what are we at right now, like 32 with the new expansion clubs in 2025. I think if we grow to 40 right in the next 6, 7, 8, 10 years, I think the MLS tries to create something similar to what exists out there, right? A closed version of a promotion relegation league, an MLS 1 and MLS 2. We're gonna see hopefully some resemblance of what exists out there.
That's something that I say the MLS needs eventually if you grow that big, because it's. I mean, you're having in Mexico, the one Mexico had is just complacency. You don't have to win as long as you make it to playoffs. I mean, right now, from the 13, 14 teams that are in each division, how many teams are going to playoffs? 9, 8 out of them. That's a huge percentage of teams that get to go compete, and still, they get momentum in playoffs, they can take it. I've seen that before, like in Mexico. So it's just, how can you, when you bring relegation, is you're for sure gonna have teams really truly compete and not worry so much about the way I think about it. How it is here sometimes is they worry about metrics on performance and how many runs and passes. I'm like, yes, but where are those passes going? The runs for what? Like the score, you lost 3-0. What are you talking about? This guy performed great in the field when your team got smacked.
It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's all about the end result. And sometimes I think it's like here in North America, right, in the broader continent, it's easy to forget that because it's easy to get. You mentioned complacent. That's a good word. I think it's easy to rest on your laurels a little bit or not feel as much pressure because at the end of the day, there's still, because of how many teams actually get in, like you said, there's still a strong opportunity for you to have some kind of success this season. Whereas if this exact team had been playing another part of the world, from a positive aspect, the season would have been over a long time ago. And now, you would have been fighting to not have the worst outcome imaginable happen in your season. And I think that's sometimes needed. Fan bases need to go through that. Me personally, I'm a fan of, a couple different very big clubs, and, it's embarrassing when we're not dominating. It's embarrassing when we're barely in a top 4 race or whatever it may be. And that's just not the feeling here, right? It's like, as long as you're still in the playoff bubble, you're talking shit, you're bragging, you're having a good time with the fans. Just a very, very different climate.
Yeah, it's completely different, especially here. Everything is okay. We make like say that the coach's job is okay, if we make the playoffs, we might stay, and if we don't, believe in the process. So it, it's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. And
And they also
man,
have a lot of
Okay.
I was going to say that's kind of interesting segue, man. I mean, you being down there, I think right now, in my opinion, Austin has one of the most interesting storylines in all of MLS because you have a team, right, in its first two seasons getting to a Western Conference final, showing that a team can overperform. A team can find a way to band together as men, do what needs to get done, get the results, and in the process, right, beat off a big rival in Dallas in the playoffs, and then try to go steal one from LA. It ultimately didn't work out, but it was a performance I think every Austin fan should be proud of. And then you walk into this season, and obviously the season's been up and down from Austin's perspective, but from someone who's very close and creates content around this team and around others who equally also support the team down there in Austin. What's it been like this year, man? Technically, Austin's still in the playoff race. There's still an opportunity to save and salvage something this season. But a lot of fans feel like there's been a lot of complacency this year, not just from the coach, but from other fans. And there's a lot of mixed opinions. How do you think this season has gone so far?
I think there is a disconnect. They had two players that, we cannot say that left. One was Garrison and then Martins. Those two players, they somehow glued a lot of the locker room together, and you can just see them, rallying the groups. I had a question. I had a chance to ask a player, Garrison, what did you learn after losing to to LA Galaxy last season? He's like, what I learned is just, I don't care if it's LAFC or not. We come to win, and if we don't win, like there's something wrong with us. That's the type of, the mentality you got to have, taking accountability. And I feel like this season, the confusion has just been very two polarizing groups, Wolf out and Wolf in, you always see that the team wins, it's always like, oh, Wolf is back in. The team loses, it's Wolf out. So, but also Wolf has, the coach, Josh Wolf, he hasn't really understood how to manage the locker room and a group of players in tough scenarios, or how to bounce back. And I think a lot of it could have been his fault, but also a lot of that could also not be his fault because of what happened before the season. So you didn't get the players that you probably wanted to bring in. And with the whole Claudio Reina, Cooper Halter drama. So I don't know how much that took away from how they were planning the season, because he left, I think it was mid-January or early January. So you only had a couple of months between that. So you brought some players in, but it really didn't bring depth to the team. I think for me is you sort of took out some key components from last year into this year, and then you didn't really replace them with players that will bring that same caliber of like talk or like strength in the locker room, leadership. And after that, it started just going downhill. Especially the first game is what said for me. It was sort of a precedent of what was to come. We came in my opinion, very, 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 what was that word? Not creídos, like very, like there was just a sense of humility that was lacking, thinking first game against, St. Louis, we're going to win it, we're at home. And then we lost. Right after that, we won a couple of games, but it wasn't just the same. And ever since, Violete and the Leagues Cup, not the Leagues Cup, the Conca Champions, that sort of just started the nightmare for everyone here in Austin. And ever since then, like you can't bounce back from that. I think for me, the loss against the Haitian team, and nothing wrong with being Haitian, but it's just the infrastructure that they have and how they were playing in the field that it's not theirs, it's borrowed. And then they win against a team that has way better infrastructure, and it's a shock. And from that, it's hard to bounce back. And Wolf hasn't found a way to bounce back. Also, doing some substitutions to take out Ring, our previous captain, and bring in his son. That sort of made everybody like, "What the hell is going on here?" So that there's just decisions. Diego leaving. I think Diego leaving was the decision where they needed to, expand it for more money for the future, but also you take away some stuff from the culture. So in the midst of getting eliminated from the Leagues Cup, you take out Diego, and then you have a press conference where you have your sporting director saying you overachieved. It's a lot of confusion.
It is. And the Diego move to me is something that from the outside looking in, right? Because I'll be honest, even as a Dallas fan, as much as we've established a winning, and I say winning in the sense that we make playoffs for the most part every season. We don't go on to really win the major trophy at the end of the year because we don't make splash signings. We're a very financially tight-knit run club, right? We rely heavily on academy products and things like that. And I'm okay with the identity that we have. But I've always been a little bit jealous of what Austin has had culturally, in the sense that the community is very bought in, a lot of seemingly strong support from the front office. And people can feel about Josh Wolf any way they want to feel. But the Diego Fagundes trade, to me, signaled something very, very interesting, right? I don't know. I don't know if it was a strategic move by Wolf to regain control of the locker room, if that's really what it was or not. But how did it feel from your perspective? 'Cause I'm very curious. I know that there was a very sentimental goodbye that was, organized with Diego before he left. I'm sure I heard rumors that he had found out about the trade in very interesting ways. But as a fan down there, right, and as someone who's close to the team, I mean, how did it feel, that trade being announced, and ultimately, do you think the team is better for it?
It was a shocker. I didn't know that was gonna happen until I got a text. They're like, "Hey, Josh Wolf messed up," and then a second later, I see someone already tweeting it. I think it was Bogart. Like, oh shit. But that right there, I'm just gonna give a little bit the goodbye. I was one of the ones that organized it, and it was a joke saying, "Let's bring mariachis to this house," but then like, dude, these are babies, so nope. So then called the brewery, Hop Squad, and they're like, "Yeah, let's do it here." So then I got a hold of La Murga at the Austin. They brought the band, and then for me, it was like not everyone's gonna be able to come because I don't know what to expect. And at first it was gonna be a surprise, but it wasn't. So people that came wasn't turned away, Anyone that came was allowed to take a picture with Diego and say hi to him and tell him how they felt. But it kind of felt like a funeral. Like, I don't know. It felt, you're happy for that guy going somewhere like LA Galaxy. It's a very good team, but the way he's leaving is like there was a sort of a bitter taste in their mouth that came from the club. I think a lot of people, they were like, "Okay, you're doing this. After you get eliminated, now everything's gonna fall on you." So people's questioning of the club, went from maybe 30% to 100% now, because now every bad result is going to be falling on the people that made this decision, and the ones that made the decisions were Josh Wolf and Rodo Borrell. So I think for me, it was just, okay, Diego's leaving. How can you give him the proper farewell? You know what? You're going to miss him, but it's, you can't also just throw away the towel in the season. And like, you gotta, the way I look at it is, you gotta do something to bounce back from this, because it was a shock. It was a culture shock. It was something that nobody expected, and how it happened. The club has their ways. Some may agree, some may not agree. Diego, I'm pretty sure, he's gonna do well in Galaxy, but I think we won't really know about this whole Diego thing until the season is over. But at this moment, just what decisions they made, it's not looking good.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna, if maybe playoffs in the playoff round, see what happens. But this whole time we've been having the season like, oh, let's see what happens after this. Let's see what happens after that. But you're never like, bro, what the fuck about, what's going on now? Like, what's going on in this team? Like, I mean, in this like tomorrow's game, like, why not worry about Portland? Everything's about, oh, we're gonna just wait for later and improve. Or like, we don't see the improvement now. We talk about it in the future, but where's everything that everything that needs to be better, it's not in the present.
If let's say Austin finds a way to make it work without Fagundes, at least temporarily, right? The remainder month and a half plus of the season. If Austin makes playoffs, even if they get eliminated in round one, does Wolf save his job?
You know what? I would say yes. People are not gonna like this decision from the team, but I think yes. Now they're gonna, I assume the signings they're gonna plan, they're gonna be better because you have a person behind him that is very knowledgeable about the sport and knows everything about soccer that there is to know. I mean, he won a Champions League with his previous team before he came here, so that's huge. But there's going to be a lot of accountability, and a lot of, okay, you're staying, what's going to be different compared to last season. So the patience from people is going to be a lot shorter this time. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will be, man. I think Rodo Borrell is going to be, I mean, I respect him highly. I think everybody should. I think he has the resume to back it all up, but I think equally he's not a guy Wolf picked, right? They probably think about this game very differently. And sometimes that could be good, right? You don't want too many, I always say, I had the saying, too many chefs in the kitchen, right? Too many people who think the same way running the show.
Yeah.
You need to have difference of opinion. I think he will offer that. I think he, in spades, right? He probably has more to say about the type of football he wants to play at Austin versus what Josh Wolf wants to play. So there's going to be a lot. I think a lot of changes, whether Wolf is around next season or not. I think there's going to be a lot of changes personnel-wise, and there's going to be a very different-looking Austin FC for next season that maybe fans are excited about. I think we'll really see. But no matter what, I think Otra Por Favor is going to be around, alive, well, as a show, kicking, right? And I really kind of wanted to almost conclude to today's show in that way, right? Spend these last 5 or 10 minutes kind of focusing on your show, man. I think personally, it's got to be considered somewhat of a cultural mainstay by now. I'm a big fan of the show. I think I learned something every time you guys go live and you bring another guest on, someone who's passionate about the community of Austin and wants to see it to continue to grow the right way. And of course, football impacts, I feel like, everybody in some form or fashion down there. But let's talk about maybe why you started it, right? I mean, obviously, we're 40 minutes in now. The audience can see that you've got some real ball knowledge and you've been around the block. But what made you really want to put your opinions on the internet, and why specifically in this way with the guests that you bring on, with the touch of the Austin, liquor scene down there, right? There's always a drink that's mixed well, and for the audience, on that show. How did all of this come together?
I think I grew up listening to the radio a lot, especially in the mornings, and I got into also listening to interviews way before podcasting came about. So from that, it was just one of those that the pandemic happened. So a lot of comedians in Mexico that I follow, they started coming out with podcasts, and they were fun. So it was something that you saw, like, dude, you can actually drink on a show. In TV you can't really do it, but you can do it on a show. So, like, say there was there was Otro Rollo with Al Ramones back in the 90s and 2000s. He had a guest every other program. So from that is, and also there's a group called another show called El Calabozo, and it was just a lot of, I would say if they were allowed to drink, it would be a lot funnier, but they couldn't, and live TV back then. So, but there was always at the end, it was like a sweet taste, like a feel good taste. And I'm a believer, like I'd rather feel good than feel like shit. I'd rather consume something that's gonna make me feel better. And question things and ask questions and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's like, what's the point of it if I'm gonna be pissed off at everyone if I'm done, or if I'm gonna be fighting with everybody. So just looking at those, in that show, maybe in their personal lives it was different, but in the show it was great. And the comedians that I started listening to, they, it was just like the pandemic. I was also saving up to pay for my wife and I's wedding. So I had a part-time job delivering Chinese food on the weekends at night. And from that, I got to learn more about podcasts, how they run, and just hearing it. I'm like, you know what? The technical part you can always understand later, but just how do you do something, or what's it about? What do you want to say? This is where it's at. So, and then from that, it was after, getting married and I would say start of 2021, before the team came about, I've always wanted to do something with media, and like, man, I want to do a podcast. And I had my friends, and we usually played soccer on Thursday nights. And I was like, how come I don't bring those conversations to the table in a microphone? Because there were some pretty good conversations. So like, ended up doing that. Two of my friends joined, David Hernandez and Jorge. But then they had family stuff going on, and they wanted to do other things. So I started just doing it by myself. Michelle helped out sometimes. Michelle Sanchez, saludos. And from that, at the end of the day, it was, okay, I don't just want it to be based on a team. I love the team. I love everything about it. The stadium is literally a block away from where I work. But I don't want to be talking about the games every time we have the show. Like, there's more to it than just soccer. Hay más en la vida que el fútbol. And then that's when I thought about, what? How about bringing people from the community? Because if you go to a barbershop, barbers have a lot of cool stories. So I was fortunate to know some barbers in town, and they came, and we had an episode. It was like, I think episode 12 or 13. It was a great one. And then I'm always like, you know what? I want to bring a sex ed to the space. So she came, Irma Garcia. So from that, it's like, I just want to continue to bring in people from different backgrounds and just invite them for them to share their story, have a drink, talk about, whatever, they're involved, or Austin FC. But the whole point is just leaving and sharing it, and people get to experience or hear something from someone that they might take. It could be a story of, they make them feel good at the end of the day. So that's what it was about. And then I got into photography because I wanted to have a camera where I can also have it on video instead of just audio. So then that's when I got I got a camera, and then I got it to where it's dual capacity. So I had never taken pictures. I had to learn how to take pictures, and I was fortunate to be surrounded by people that are very good at it. So they gave me some pointers, but a lot of it was just like, go out there and practice. So, and then after that, it was, I would say, a couple of months after I picked up my camera, I got my first credential, and my first game that I shot, like for the supporter sections, my SD card damaged, so I didn't have any pictures from that. I was like, fuck, man, I looked bad. And they're like, no worries. You had some good pictures before the game. So, and then ever since then, it's just been, where can I get the access to? When can I talk about it? When can I cover it? And how can we do it? That's just been the thing about Otra Por Favor. And I mean, there's a lot of stories at the end of the day that are untold. And if there's a way for me to share those stories in my space, why not?
Yeah. I love it, bro. I mean, look, what you guys kind of just looked at the video catalog of your channel. I mean, you hit it right on the head, right? It could be barbers, a gym owner, an artist, anybody that's local. I have a firm belief that football, especially in communities like Austin, right? This isn't the case everywhere because we're still early in this country. It's taking city by city, state by state, slowly, a little bit at a time. But in areas, in populous areas like Austin, where there is a strong sense of the Hispanic community, football touches everybody. And it may not be as relevant in someone else's life as it is in mine, but they know about it. And it does impact how they maybe do their business every day, or how they talk to their loved ones or their friends every day, how they hang out with people. And I think your show, man, Otra Por Favor, is a fantastic idea. I think it's clearly bringing the community down there in Austin together in a way that I don't think I've seen other shows really do it. Where most other shows, right, are very, very focused on the soccer, on the tactics, on the or just frankly on the reactions of the fans, whatever it may be. But I love that there's something a little bit more, a little bit extra about Otra Por Favor. So, Richie, man, you got a great thing going, and I really can't hype it up enough, man. Before we go, you obviously took the leap. You wanted to do this for yourself, for others that maybe think the way that you do. I always like to think that there's someone who's tuning in that has been scared up to this point, right? Maybe they've been a little bit hesitant to take the leap that you took, start creating content, learning how some of the technical aspects work, getting a voice that's uniquely theirs. What would you tell that person, right, who's maybe has an idea that's unique and original, but they haven't really acted upon it yet?
To just do it, man. I think there's two ways you can, when it comes to equipment. You don't have to have the best equipment. All you need sometimes is just a laptop. When you first started, you don't have a good budget. A laptop, there's affordable sound systems out there and 2 mics. You can spend $400 or $500. You're gonna spend that in a bar if you go out almost every other weekend. You're gonna spend that in shoes or cologne or anything. So, I would say try to get the equipment, but I do say try to get a little better equipment than just not like say I get $20 microphone, because that shit is gonna break after a couple of uses. And from that, start shooting, man. Start recording. You're gonna fuck it up at the beginning. Like you're gonna not get it right, but then just shoot, and eventually you're gonna understand what you want to do, how you want to do it. What's in your space that makes it relevant and makes it different. And don't be scared. Don't be scared to do anything. I think sometimes we the first thing I got from when I first started was like, man, there's so many podcasts out there. I was like, so fucking what? Like, there's how many billion people? Like, there's 8 billion people in this world. The sky is for everyone. So why not? Take advantage of whatever's biting in front of you. So just that, and if you're gonna be afraid, that's fine. But turn any negativity and any fear into something creative, and eventually, it's gonna be like shit at first, but then it gets better.
Yeah. I will sign off on that statement too, man. It's no one comes into this thing and they're just good. Unless you come with all the media training, which is again, that's not their first time, right? They've been doing it for a long time. So no one who just starts this thing off is good. I think if you understand that and accept it, going in, if I were to go back and watch my first interview ever, it's probably terrible. I probably have so much that I can work on. But you get better, right? You click record again and again and again, and then eventually you find your voice. And so, yeah, man, I feel like I needed to hear that a little bit. I think that there are others out there who equally needed to hear that message as well, Richie. So
yeah,
look, man.
And like one more thing is, you're looking at like MLS, right? How Apple TV, their production team and everything. You're talking about millions of dollars in budget for this media stuff. It's not competing, but don't try to do everything similar to what anyone else is doing. Like, find your own thing, because their budget is a lot different than your budget. So whatever you can work with, just work with it.
I agree. Yeah, work within your means, and if you do it the right way, over time, you're going to level up what you use. You just will. You know, the more that you find that you're using it, you're going to get better mics. You're going to get a better camera. You'll get better guests. Right? You know, everything will slowly just start to level itself up. So I couldn't agree more, man.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Awesome. Well, Richie, bro, I'm really glad that we did this, man. I feel like we only told a very, very brief snapshot of your story, which means that we got to get you back on at some point in the near future to do it all again. And I got a feeling that by then, right, Otra Por Favor is going to be, I don't know, what, episode 200 or something. I think it's going to be a good time, man. I think that you guys are, the way you run your show, the level of authenticity that you bring to it. I know I'm an avid listener and viewer, and I think that, you're going to have a lot more between now and the next time we bring you on the show. So, again, before we wrap up, man, any final shouts you want to give?
We are about to, if I don't know if by now, but we're going to be reaching 100 episodes. And it's cool, man. There's a couple of cool guests that are going to be lined up before the year is over, and they're local in Austin, but also we're going to try to do some stuff in other cities. So stay tuned.
I'm excited, man. I'm so excited for that. All right, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. If you got to this part of the episode, we are both sincerely grateful. Thank you so much. If you haven't done so already, like the video down below, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Spotify, go ahead and follow Box to Box. And if you haven't done so already, go check out Otra Por Favor. These guys are bringing interviews and community building and storytelling to podcasts in a way that I really haven't seen before. So I'm super excited for Richie to reach that 100 mark in terms of episodes. And I got a feeling it's going to be at 200 before we know it. Richie, thank you again, my man. I really appreciate it. From everybody here at GOLZtv and Box to Box, we'll catch you guys next time.
Saludos.